Commercial property rent is plus GST and residential property rent is no GST. What do you mean by that? In residential property, when we collect rent, that the rent, let's say $500 per week rent, it means that every week the tenant is going to pay you $500. That's it. They're not going to pay any GST because residential property is GST free. On commercial property, it has a GST. Commercial property, when you say that same $500, which is like commercial property rent generally monthly, like yearly you calculate and divide by 12, and each month the tenant is going to pay the rent, and let's say the rent is same like $500 per week, so roughly about $2,000. Then on top of $2,000, they will also pay you a $200, which is 10% of the GST. Because commercial rent is plus GST. Now, why I am saying this, it is an important part in commercial property, because you will collect GST, and then of course you need to create your business activity statements, and you need to provide these to ATO about the GST that you are collecting. What you need to understand, that any expense that you put, and let me just give you an expense. Let's say there is a door that needs to be changed, and the door total cost is, let's say, $1,000, and whoever is putting the door, that person is also doing the business, so they are going to say $1,000 plus GST, which is that $100 extra for the GST component, right? So that is going to be $1,100. Now, why it is important? Because in residential property, that $100 that you spend, which is the GST component, that comes from your rent itself, because you are not collecting GST, but you are paying GST. So the GST amount that you need to come out from your rent itself. But in commercial property, that is not the case, because in commercial property, since you are collecting GST, and then $100 you can offset from the GST. So basically you reduce that $100 from that GST collections, and the remaining GST amount then you're going to actually pay to ATO. Now, I'm not an accountant. I would highly recommend you to talk to your accountant on that. But what you need to understand, that commercial property, that's why because you collect GST, the GST can be offset on all your expenses. Hence, you get to keep more money in your pocket. Whereas in residential property, because you do not collect GST, hence you cannot keep that GST, like whatever expenses that you are putting into a residential property, that GST comes from your rent. So your net rent become way more less. And that is how residential property investment, what I call is like a social investing, or kind of like parking your money. Whereas in a commercial property investment is actually to become financially independent, to actually make money. It's a positive cash flow. So it's all on that angle, because of that one extra parameter called GST. Now, if you don't understand this completely, then go and talk to your accountant and ask this question: can I offset my GST for my commercial rent that I collect for any expenses? And I'm pretty sure that you will get that answer as yes. On the other side, the same question, that if you do, because you do not collect any GST component in residential property, there is no chance of offsetting it, and it is actually coming from your rent only. So that one component itself, imagine if it is a big transaction, like tomorrow, you buying a property which is like a $200,000 annual rent, means $20,000 annually you will be able to collect GST. That $20,000, let's say, even though you have expenses, let's say, 5,000 GST, which is like 50,000 expenses, that 5,000, you literally save that money, because that 5,000 will come from this 20,000 GST component. And that is how, my friend, you get to keep more money into your bank account because of this GST offset. So this one component itself will keep you a lot of money in your bank account, and you will become financially independent much faster. So GST is something that you need to understand, and hope this gives you a clear picture about how you can do the GST offset. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.